Want some whiskey in your water, sugar in your tea? What's all these crazy questions they're asking me? This is the craziest party that could ever be. Don't turn on the lights, cause I don't wanna see. Mama told me not to come. Mama told me not to come. She said that ain't the way to have fun. So open up this window, let some air into this room. I think Mama's joking from the smell of stale perfume and the cigarette you're smoking, about to scare me half to death. Open up the window and let me catch my breath. Mama told me not to come. Mama told me not to come. She said that ain't the way to have fun. So Mama told me not to come. Mama told me not to come. She said that ain't the way to have fun.
So the radio is blasting. Someone's knocking at the door. I'm looking at my girlfriend. She just passed out on the floor. I've seen so many things I ain't never seen before. Don't know what it is, but I don't want to see no more.
Mama told me not to come. Mama told me not to come. She said that ain't the way to have fun. So hi everyone, welcome to the Guitar Show. This is Ramon Goose and I'm here with my very good friend Henry Kaiser. And actually Henry and I were really discussing recently the subject about fetish guitars, which we are both very guilty of. And we actually own many of these, well, a few of these guitars. So we're going to be basically talking about Henry's and my small collection of these fetish guitars. And I'm going to bring in Henry now. And just to introduce this subject. So Henry, take it away.
Hey, everybody. So fetish guitars, we all have musical heroes, musical guitar heroes. And often some of us try to have a guitar that's like their hero's guitar or does what their hero's guitar does. And I think Ramon and I, in our discussions, have identified four, count them, four, types of fetish guitars. The first one, Type 1, where you have the same guitar as your hero, exactly the same guitar, or very, very similar. Or it could be, still under Type 1, a recently manufactured replica of your hero's guitar. That would be, say, like a Fender Eric Clapton Blackie, or it could be a Gibson Peter Green guitar, or the Fender Alligator Jerry Garcia guitar, which it turns out isn't really like Jerry's guitar was in the old days. Okay, that's Type 1. Type 2 is where you have a guitar that's functionally the same as your hero's guitar, but might look substantially different. I think your Goosecaster, Ramon, it doesn't look like Ry Cooder's Stratocaster, but it's functionally similar or close to the same. Okay? And then the third is where you think, well, my hero's guitar did that, but I could make it better. And you try to improve it so it can do the job better, or it can do different things that the hero's guitar did. That's type 3. And we'll see all of these, an example of these, and talk about them for you. And the fourth is where you accidentally have or purposefully end up with your hero's guitar or one of your hero's guitar. You know, you could spend a lot of money like Kirk Hammett in Metallica and buy Peter Green's Les Paul, or you could have gotten something very economically like how Clarence White's Stringbender Telecaster, where it's ended up nowadays. But many people have a guitar of their heroes. So shall we start off? Hey, let's start off, because we both have done this, the Peter Green Les Paul thing. Now, I see you have the pickup covers removed on yours. On mine, I've turned it around.
Yes.
Like Peter Green's, but because I've got the covers, and they have the out of phase or the reverse magnet with when both pickups are on, right?
Yeah. I mean, also, actually, if you look very closely, you can see the screws are also as well on the bottom. So it's a small detail, but we might as well. It's a simple trick to do. The difference, I think, between my pickups and your pickups, Henry, is this pickup here is actually reverse wound, with yours, I think, has a magnet flip. Okay,
right, which I think is what Peter Green's was.
Yeah.
But it functionally, it does the same thing.
Yes.
Why don't you play yours for us, and let's see.
Okay.
So do you set the volume controls in some special way to play like that?
Yeah, I mean, basically, because the pickups are going to give you a different output, slightly different, they're not going to be identical, because when they're identical, it's much more kind of, you can hear it suddenly cancel each other. Some of those frequencies are cancelled. So sometimes you have to, if you really want that nasally sound, you have to dial it in. And I think that's what Peter Green did, because sometimes you can hear a very, very nasally sound on, you know, like the song Jumping at Shadows, the live version at the Boston Tea Party. But other times he's obviously just got everything wide open, you know. So it's kind of a little bit of a balance. You can just tune in that sweet spot with both the volumes.
Yeah, there's a wide variety of tones from Peter Green himself, and a guitar, if you're trying to make a guitar like his, you can experience those same things. What's special about mine is Peter Green signed the back of my headstock.
Wow.
So I've got the special mojo. But so I want to understand what it, because I'm not a Les Paul player or a Gibson player, I want to understand what it felt like to play Peter Green's guitar and hold it against your body. I didn't so much want to do a close imitation of him, but I wanted to understand where that guitar put him in the spiritual universe. So here's a little example of me playing not so much like Peter Green, but playing my crazy backwards pedal style with this guitar, but trying to relate to where he was in the spiritual universe during his best solos, like the one you mentioned on Jumping at Shadows. here's your Stevie Ray Vaughan Strat, but it doesn't say SRV on it. It's not Sunburst. What's going on? Is Type 2 where it's functionally the same?
Yeah,
or?
it's kind of. I guess it is a little bit of 1 and 2. I mean, it's got the obvious appointments like the tremolos, a left-handed version of the tremolo, and also, I mean, this is for the real connoisseurs. It's got the correct machine heads. And Brazilian rosewood. I've tried to get the nut width, and really it's about the jumbo frets, and again the feel of the instrument, because you really want to kind of tap into what it was like, that Steve Ray Vaughan when he had his guitar, what it felt like, exactly how you said, Henry, with the Peter Green guitar.
That's an important thing, is the technical stuff, I think, and I've never heard anybody say that except you or me.
Yeah, it's really, really true, and I mean. The Brazilian rosewood, does that make a difference? Jury's out. I think the neck shape and the fret, the size of the frets, and the string gauge is very important as well, because the string gauge is the guitar is always tuned to E flat, and it has the 5 springs to hold the tension down, but you can still use the tremolo arm. So it's kind of like, it's almost an instrument unto itself. It's a different type of setup to a normal guitar.
Yeah, and strings, we'll get to that later, because that's an important thing if you want to sound just the same, but I have a good guitar to talk about it about later. Hey, let's hear that thing.
Okay, here we go.
Well, I have this Stratocaster, which is something I put together that's supposed to sound, and does actually sound, like Jerry Garcia's famous Strat Alligator that Graham Nash gave him, that he played in 1972, that was heavily, heavily modified. So I wrote the essay for the Europe 72 book with the Europe 72 box set for the Grateful Dead, the essay on the Alligator guitar, and I researched it to death. I talked to everybody who worked on it, including my good friend, late good friend, he's dead now, Rick Turner, and with his advice, made this thing. So it's similar. It's functionally the same. Pickups for the right gear type pickups in it, and the very important Alembic Stratoblaster, and the replacement of the Fender bridge with a two-pneumatic bridge and a big heavy stop, swamp ash, maple neck. Some things look the same. I've got a Captain Beefheart safe as milk sticker on it, instead of what he had, but I do have the Keep on Truckin' sticker, so it's sort of a joke for the look-alike. It's interesting, we compared it to the real Alligator, which was found a few years ago, and it was in Turner's shop, wow. And it had been modified and had its pickups changed since, and it didn't sound anything like it used to sound anymore. Right. And then Fender based their $20,000 Alligator model on the way that guitar is now, not the way it was back then, which I thought was a little bit of a mistake. But this thing does that job very, very well.
So what pickups are these in here, Henry?
These are Jim Rolfe pickups that were spec'd to sound like what the research told us was in the pickups that were in the guitar when Jerry got it. And it sounds the same with a Stratoblaster. Put it to a twin reverb with JBLs, and it's instant Europe 72 Jerry Garcia. Now, I'm going to play it through a 15-inch JBL speaker now. I'm not trying to get the tone just right, but here's a little bit of Dark Star with it. So I've had that guitar for quite a few years, and I've enjoyed playing it. But then I messed with another guitar that I put it together to make it like an improved version of that would do that job better and maybe get a few tones that were different. So it's got a Stratoblaster. It's got different pickups. It's got Q-tuner pickups, unusual Dutch pickups. And it's got a Wenge neck. And it's got true temperament frets, which to me, I wish all my guitars had true temperament frets because it sounds much more in tune to my ears. Here's playing a little more of that same Dark Star type thing with this guitar instead. And again, I don't have the amp for the perfect Jerry Garcia tone, but this is a little better for me at playing a 1972 Dark Star than the Alligator copy. Now, what's that?
Okay, well, this is a custom-made guitar which was made by the Bass Gallery in Camden. And the Bass Gallery in Camden is a bass guitar shop. And it's famous for Pino. It's basically Pino Palladino's sort of favourite guitar store, I think. You know, he goes in, he sells all these basses and gets his basses modified. And but cut long story short, they have a guy called Martin and John Chapman. And John Chapman has Chapter Guitars, and he made me this thing, which replicates a guitar owned by the great late Ale Facatori from Mali. And he played a very cheap Ibanez called a Seiwa Powersonic, and they're very rare. You can hardly find one. But Veer Facatori still owns his father's Japanese guitar, and so I decided to make something similar. And the thing about this is it's made from all African woods. You know, and I've tried to because his guitar only had one humbucker in the bridge. It actually had a speaker in there, but I've kind of obviously tried to improve on things and not have the speaker because it was like a battery powered. It was a real kind of cheap looking thing, and this has actually got a Strat neck, but it's a similar neck to his with the.
But it's got a two and a four side, so it's different string tension at the headstock.
Yeah, that's right. So his was a 3-a-side. So this is 4 and 2, but it's got a Wenge neck, and the fretboard I think is African ebony wood, and this is really interesting. If you look very closely here, you can see a peacock. I don't know if you can see that, just there.
Oh, it's like seeing the bear in the cloud in the sky. Or the sky.
Yeah.
Yes, noisy. Yes.
But yeah, so it's a really nice instrument for playing that African style. I tune this to one of Alif Akatori's tunings where you put the E up to G. But just a warning, guys, don't play that tuning after midnight. Otherwise, you will invoke evil spirits, as Alif Akatori himself said.
I actually once got a free lesson from him when I was interviewing him at the Vancouver Folk Festival decades ago. Amazing. And I said, so can you tell me about your tuning? And he said, sure. And you could see the translator who was with him, who was somebody he knew, he didn't usually tell people his tunings, but he sat down with me on the grass outdoors and spent an hour giving me a great lesson, which I've unfortunately forgot most of. Too bad.
Well, I'm going to do a little demonstration, and this is me doing a bad imitation of Henry, because Henry's I'm a big fan of Henry's music. So this is me with a little bit of Henry, but I kind of failed. I tried to, here's my effort anyway.
All right, let's hear it.
Okay.
Well, that was fun. So here's a guitar, exactly the same guitar as a particular hero. It's an Hispania.
Wow.
Can you out there in the audience guess who played this guitar, who was a very famous bluesman? I never would have guessed, because on his guitar, he'd covered up the name on the headstock and put homegrown ornamentation of his own on it. So I was saying to my friend Alex Vardy about 10 years ago, I was saying, hey, Alex, I was looking at the videos of Fred McDowell when he was playing electric guitar and trying to figure out what he was playing, and I can't find anything like that. And Alex says, oh, it's an Hispania, like the one I had when I was young. And then I noticed McDowell played the same thing, and I was like, really? And it's nothing anybody cares about. It's super cheap. Turns out it has really nice pickups made by Schaller. That's just weird chance. But it's a cheap guitar, import guitar, and it's really...
Henry, is it Japanese? Is that a Japanese guitar?
I think it might be made in Italy.
Right.
Something like that. I used to know. We could put it in the notes. But it really can sound just like Fred McDowell on the I Do Not Play No Rock and Roll record, or the live records from that period, the Arhoolie records. I always loved his sound. And when it came time to do this little demo I'm about to do for you, I wasn't in the Fred McDowell perfect mode that day. So I just show you. I'll just slide around on it a little bit, but you can hear it. But it's a Heroes guitar that's out there cheaper, that nobody cares about, or nobody even knows that that's what he played.
And it goes to show to everyone watching that you don't need to spend $50,000 on a Steve Ray Vaughan, Fender custom master built Strat. You can get, a Heroes guitar version.
You could get this. You could get this for $175, $150, because no one cares the least bit.
So not every Heroes guitar costs a bunch of money. It's some is next to nothing.
Yep. Okay, I'll whip out the slide.
unfortunately, two of my guitars are without tuners at the moment, but long story.
Oh, that's the secret. You're playing with no strings. That's how to get the magic sound.
Well, yeah, you know.
It's just like when he was having lunch in the studio and wasn't playing his guitar. You got it perfect. Right? So who had that? What's that?
Well, this is a lot of people when I play this on the show, Henry, think that this is a good friend of yours, Bill Frisell, had a short scale guitar with these two original Dynasonics from the 1950s in a Telecaster body.
They're De-Armand pickups,
sorry, yeah,
right?
De-Armand. And basically, I spotted these in just before his death was a guitarist called Enrique Ciacci, if that's how you pronounce his name, and he was an Italian spaghetti western guitar, and he featured he composed and was featured in films such as Fistful of Dollars and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and so he was one of.
So he was a master of tone.
Yeah.
Right, a master.
Yeah. But
I mean, Hank Marvin, watch out. I mean, it comes from Hank Marvin, but
this is
he pushed it farther.
Yes, and this is what I was going to tell you is that those Italian guitarists, because I don't know when those films were made, but I'm guessing the early '60s, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah. So it was before Eric Clapton plugged into a Marshall. So those guys, and they probably didn't get blues records in Italy so easily as England did in the early '60s. So I'm guessing that their main influence was Hank Marvin.
I would certainly think so, but they really took it somewhere else.
Yeah,
darker, mysterious, scary. Yeah,
and so he ended up in the latter part of his career playing a Telecaster with these two De-Armands, and I just loved his sound. And he was playing, funnily enough, a lot of Apaches, Hank Marvin Apache songs. And sorry, so let me rephrase that. He was playing Apache by Hank Marvin in his later career. It was in part of his set. He also did Sleepwalk, a nice version of Sleepwalk, and this was the guitar that he ended up with, and that was my inspiration for this guitar. And he's kind of a bit of a hero, and I'm influenced by him. So there you go.
So let's hear you play that thing.
Okay, Henry, what do we have here?
Well, first, let me just show you a little clip of a big hero of mine, Pete Cozy, who played with Miles Davis 1973 to 1975. He was in the AACM, militant black artist group in Chicago, and he was a sideman at Chess Records, being on Electric Mud and Howling Wolf Doesn't Like His Album and all those things. And he was a master of music. I fortunately met him when I first started to play guitar when I was young, a couple of years after I started, and he gave me some advice, which I followed. And then later on, when I did the Yo Miles project with Wadada Leo Smith, I did kind of a tribute to him in that. And then when he was on the Miles from India album, he got sick, and he had me sub for him on tour. And then one time he was better, and he was playing the gig, and he asked me if I'd come to the rehearsal and sit next to him, and he talked whenever he played and told me what he was thinking and what he was doing. I keep having these weird experiences with Heroes. But this is a Morris electric. It's got a scroll on it. Pete Cozy had one with different pickups and a rosewood top instead of a maple top. And it's a Gibson scale guitar, and it's a really snaky guitar to play with light strings. I always wanted one like Pete Cozy's. I'd never been able to find one. I remember seeing them for sale in Japan in 1972 when I was working there doing something in film. And then I noticed that Mike at Eastwood My Rare Guitars had one, and I had a transparent plastic Teisco Spectrum 5 that I'd got in Japan, and I traded it to him for it.
So are these guitars expensive, Henry?
This would not be a terribly expensive guitar. You see that Eastwoods are fairly cheap, but these are really rare. I think maybe they made 20 or a few dozen at the most. Wow. But I'll whip out my Boss Tone Fuzz, which Pete Cozy told me about in 1973, and I got one. And then years later, in the 2000s, he said to me, I mentioned that he told me about the Boss Tone Fuzz, and he didn't even remember that first meeting. And he said, I wish I still had that. And I said, Pete, after you told me about it, I went out and bought one the next day, and I'll go home and I'll bring it to you. And I gave him the Fuzz, so he had one again. But I'll whip out the Boss Tone Fuzz and play something on this, and then the story gets even stranger after that. So little tribute to Pete Cozy. So that was trying to have kind of the same guitar as Pete Cozy, something a little similar. And then a very strange thing happened is I was discussing it, how much I loved it with Mike at Eastwood, and he said, we ought to make one. And so I worked with them on making a production model of a kind of a copy of it with pickups that were more like gold foils, which were kind of like the kind of pickups. And it was a great guitar, just great. So happy with how it turned out. And it turned out, I think, to be their second best-selling guitar ever. But then he made a bunch of crazy versions of it, ukulele, Mandocaster, and he made this baritone guitar. So I have a baritone version of my hero's guitar. What a crazy thing to have. And I'll play a crazy little solo on it if you don't have any. Do you have any questions?
No, I just think it's amazing how this thing it's provoked a new model, that's now out there.
I know, a bunch of new. It's great because I loved Pete Cozy and his guitar.
Yeah.
Now there's all these other ones which wouldn't have been there if I hadn't met him and loved him and known him. Weird.
Oh, what a
weird. So let me go crazy with it here for a second for you.
Again, another guitar that is stringless. Well, it's got strings hanging off it, but it's...
This is your secret of the amazing sound.
Well,
it's kind of a Zen approach to playing, isn't it?
Yeah. So but I know that you're a big fan of the Cudacaster kind of thing, Henry.
So there you are with the Tele Cudacaster. When I put together my first Cudacaster, probably more than 20 years ago, I did it as a Telecaster too. And my friend, I gave that guitar to my friend, the great guitarist in Norway, Knut Ryersrud, because I kind of came up with some other Cudacasters after that. But let's just look at this little quick demo of him playing his Tele Cudacaster.
Yeah, I just want to say, Henry, he's a fantastic player.
Okay, so that's Knut, and here's yours, which you've talked about on the guitar show here.
Yeah.
Kind of ad infinitum, which is great.
Yeah.
So do you have anything new to say, or should we I'm just going to suggest, why don't you play Sleepwalk on it?
Okay, before I do that, the only interesting thing about this is this guitar, the reason I turned it into a Cudacaster is it's kind of like followed my musical journey across Africa, and actually embedded in the fretboard is Sahara Desert sand, because it actually fell in the sea at some point there on the coast in the southern part of Morocco, just above Western Sahara. It actually fell into the sea, so there's still Sahara Desert in this guitar.
Wow. Well, let's hear you play Sleepwalk.
Okay, Henry, what do we have here now?
So my friend, the great and eccentric luthier Larry Pogriba, made this, which is a Cooter caster type guitar, through neck, and quite a wide neck, and a 27-inch scale. If I could push a magic button and change all my guitars to 27-inch scale, that's what I would do. So this is just what's a Cooter caster like with a 27-inch scale. Wow. But it's this, the same vintage pickup situation, the gold foil and the Valco type. We could go on, but we don't need to. Let's just hear how that sounds. Continuing my friend Larry Pogriba's quest to do different things and make Cooter casters different, here we have a hollow body one with a set neck. And the interesting thing here is the bridge pickup. It's not the Valco pickup. It's a National steel guitar pickup with a very large window on the strings, and it happens to be the same pickup my late good friend Freddie Roulette had in his steel, and Lindley had in his steel in many of his classic recordings. So I don't have the pedal board hooked up, so I'm not going to do the super loud distorted thing with it. I could. Actually, I will. I'll do it and do some super loud distorted stuff too. But it's just the Cooter caster, can evolve and go in different directions and different sounds. So here's a little tribute to Freddie Roulette, a weird tribute to Freddie Roulette, who was weird himself, on this guitar.
So basically, the whole deal with this one, we're trying to get close to Raikuda's sound, and like you said, you want to get inside our hero's head and strap on an instrument. That's the same.
Yeah.
Does it affect our playing when we have the same instrument as our hero? What influence does it bring to our playing? So that's really where I was coming from with this instrument.
Speaking of Raikuda, you've got that Gaia-tone guitar that I'm so jealous of, just because it has a lot of buttons. Ever since I got rid of my Teisco Spectrum 5 with all the buttons.
Let me show you.
I'm the loser.
Let me drag that one out.
The button war. Okay, drag that one out. This is such a fantastic sounding guitar in the hands of Mr. Ramon.
So, like I have a guitar for playing African music, I pretty much exclusively play Cuban music on this. So, Latin and mainly Cuban, some cumbia styles. And it normally has flat wounds on this. At the moment, it's got round wounds. And as Henry was eyeing jealously
Look at those.
the switches.
Still my beating heart.
You see, these are very important. Not sure what any of them do, but I know what that one does, and that's basically the only one I use. And it's actually a stereo guitar. So this had two outputs, and these strings would go to 1 amp, and these three strings would go. And it also had things like a fuzz thing you could operate with this jack here, and you have a button for that here. So this was a Rolls Royce. This was the Cadillac. I mean, it looks a bit like a Cadillac actually, but this was a Cadillac of Gaia-tones guitars in 1965. This was, and this pickup here. And I've never seen these pickups before on any other model, but this neck pickup is a tone to die for. It's just absolutely incredible. And Raikuda used this guitar. We had two of them to record Mambo Sinuendo, which is an amazing album with Manuel Galbon in Havana, Cuba.
Very, very cool. Let's hear it. So now it's Robin Ford hero time. And seeing you with the Telecaster there before you talk, I just have to tell you, I've seen Robin Ford more than 24 times in my life for the Blue Line, Ford Brothers Band, all different things. And the best tone I ever heard and best playing from Robin was at a Ford Brothers gig in Santa Cruz, where all he had was a Telecaster, a Tanabe Dumb Kudo pedal, and a Blackface Super Reverb. That's all. No echo, no nothing. He sounded so amazing. So I kind of think it's cool to tell. Why do you pick the Tele for?
I mean,
Robin?
I've actually had 5 Fender Esprit incarnations of the Robin Ford signature model, and I never really liked any of them. I don't know why. I never bonded with any of them. And then I said about getting a Telecaster, which he was obviously influenced by Michael Bloomfield and the Michael Bloomfield's Telecaster. I think that's why he gravitated towards it. It's got it hasn't got a slab board. It's got what they call is it a laminate board? So it's kind of like a little bit oval at the edge there, and it's thinner. So that and ash, he had an ash body. And then it's really just dialing in some pickups to get, because I think he had his pickups rewound by Lindy Freyland, if I'm correct. And, it's just about getting a good, solid Telecaster. And, because this is where you can make your voice. This doesn't have a voice as such. You have to make your own voice on these. Like, Strats are kind of similar.
Yeah.
Whereas, a Les Paul or the Fender signature Robin Ford model, it's already got a voice, So it's kind of hard to sound unique. But on these things, you can go in any direction. So, and they're just so good using, the blues, Muddy Waters, Yeah,
it's a great. Seems like it's one of the best tools for just using your hands, where your sound 95% comes from your hands. Telecaster is the best one of the best guitars at transmitting what the hands have to say in blues. And even some jazz players, like Ed Bickert, who played Telecaster, or Furzel, when he plays a Telecaster, it's a very effective tool, not to mention so many country guitarists who did amazing personal expressions where they sounded like themselves through a Telecaster, and somebody else playing the same guitar would sound totally different.
And even Robin Ford, you know, when he plays other guitars, he plays differently. When he has his Telecaster, there's a different style. He's doing something different, you know.
Yeah, a different sense of space between the notes and things. So play that thing.
Okay, Henry, what guitar is this then?
Well, that's a guitar you would never be able to identify and say what it is by sight, right? No. It's a Yamaha AE11. It's kind of like a big ES 175 with pickups, which are becoming fashionable now. I've seen several articles about these pickups. And how is it a hero's guitar? It's exactly the same guitar that my great hero Sonny Chirac played in his years with Herbie Mann and all his records before the Bill Laswell and the switch to the Les Paul. Let's look at a quick example of Sonny going nuts in the old days on this guitar. So Sonny was a good friend of mine, and he told me that he was given the guitar when they were on tour in Japan, that Yamaha said he could go in this guitar room and as many guitars as he could carry at once, he could take out of the room. But he had to carry them all at once. And he took several guitars, and this is the one that he loved, and he played and played and played.
Well, has it got a glued-in neck? Is it a glued-in neck or is it a bolt-on?
It's a set. Okay, it's a set neck. It's like an ES. Yeah. It's probably like more like some other Gibson that it's a copy of, and it's kind of cheap parts and stuff and cheap wood. But if you want to sound like Sonny Chirac, which I wanted to sound like Sonny Chirac to understand and feel the body against my body, here let's go. Here's one for Sonny.
So this is an example, Henry, of like a hero's guitar, but I've sort of upgraded it a little bit, you know. But in 1986, George Benson played the Montreal Jazz Festival, and for me, he had his pop Give Me the Night era, and I know a lot of people like his earlier stuff, but I just thought at that concert he had these big guns, you know, he'd pumped up, and he had the studded guitar strap, and he was like the man. He was the man in 1986, and he was playing. He wasn't playing his Gibson Ibanez signature model. He was playing an Ibanez FG100, which was a kind of like an ES175, similar to that guitar. And this is basically, it looks pretty much identical, 16-inch. Measurement here, and but his one had two pickups. It had two humbuckers. This has only got one. This guitar here is called a Fender Diaquisto, and it was made in the Fender Custom Shop. But it's basically, it's like a three-piece neck, laminate top and back, the same as this FG100. So this is essentially a really upmarket version of the guitar that George Benson was playing in 1986.
My friend Tasiji Munoz, a really great kind of Coltrane style guitarist, he played a two pickup version, one of those for years and years. Yeah. What's the scale length? Is it a Gibson scale or is it a Fender scale?
You know what? A good question. I think it's a Fender. but scale length, but I could be wrong. But I think it's a Fender scale length, so slightly longer.
Yeah.
I checked out your friend. He's amazing.
He's amazing. Tasiji Munoz, Tasiji.com.
Interestingly, he modified his and had a really extreme cutaway here.
To get up higher?
Yeah, he made quite a few modifications. So
He's played other guitars since, and actually he gave me one of his solid body guitars, but we'll get to that later on, to CG Smith. But so what are you going to play for us on that?
I'm going to play some Bad Benson, not his album Bad Benson, but just George Benson played badly.
All right. Well, here's an even bigger box, an 18-inch arch top, an Epiphone Emperor, and in the last years or decade of his life, my friend Derek Bailey, probably my biggest guitar hero who I play guitar because of, he played an Epiphone Emperor cutaway. So I didn't care about having one like Derek, but because I like non-cutaway arch tops. So I finally found this a couple of years ago, and it's marvelous. I can invoke Derek so easily. Derek played a lot of mixed stop notes and harmonics, tone clusters, atonal stuff. He'd pick behind the bridge and bend behind the bridge. Let's look at a quick sample of him. And now I'll do a quick sample of playing this guitar like Derek.
what do we have here? This looks like the Yamaha.
This is actually a Morris, looking kind of like the Yamaha. It's a copy of an ES 175. Derek Bailey, for most of his career, played an ES 175. I mean, always for electric guitar for his whole career, from when he was a jazz and studio player, playing Shirley Bassey and things like that, and through his amazing avant-garde improvisation years. I wanted to have a guitar like that to understand it, but ES 175s, good ones, too expensive. So I got this Morris. You could find these $700, $500. There's some on Reverb now. And I can do, I'll show a little example of electric Derek, and then I'll go right into me doing a little bit with this thing. Finding my own voice coming out of Derek Bailey very early on in the late 70s. I didn't have an ES 175, and I didn't play with the heavy Gibson 13 or 12 gauge strings like he did, but I had this 335, which is a 335 Pro, which is a maple neck 335 that they just made for a year or two. And I have light strings on it. I have nines, and it let me bend a lot more behind the bridge. So this guitar was my gateway to taking what I'd heard and loved about Derek Bailey into my own space, adding Korean and Vietnamese and Hindustani music, vibrato and bending and things like that with the lighter strings. And I put high A, which later became Bartolini pickups in it, very high fidelity, not more range than a Gibson pickup. And, well, I found myself in this guitar in 1977. So this is an example of a Heroes guitar that does something the Heroes guitar couldn't do. Okay, I love Clarence White's electric guitar playing in the Nashville West Band and in the Byrds. I mean, with the B-bender, it's amazing, and it's psychedelic. It's psychedelic country. It's so great. So years ago, more than 20 years ago, I got a guitar, a Tele with a B-bender in it, and I could never do anything like what I wanted to do. I mean, it would have taken a lot of work, but I put work into it. I sounded terrible. and at the B bender thing and knowing all the inversions and what to do. So I sold it. And then a year or so ago actually, I heard about this thing, which is a 3-bender telly, T-H-R-E-E bender. And it bends 3 strings at once when you pull on the strap. It bends the B string. I have it set up to bring that up like a B bender, Parsons White, up a full step. It bends the G string a half a step, and it bends the A string a full step, which means if I play a regular bar chord like that, E form bar chord, and then I push down on the strap, it changes it to a D chord. But it's also like having 3 different 1-string benders. They all bend at once, but depending on which strings you're playing, it's 3 different 1-string benders. It's 3 different 2-string benders at once, and it's 3 different singles, and 3 strings at once. So you would have thought it'd be a lot harder to play. However, mysteriously, I could just pick it up and I could instantly do all the Clarence White things I wanted to do and do all kinds of crazy bends. So it does more than the Heroes guitar, but it also opened up that expression for me. What a strange, weird. So,
but that's what it comes down to, isn't it, Henry? That these are tools for making music.
They're tools for expression. And this turned out to be a tool that fit for me to express in that mode. So let's take a little bit of a solo from Ode to Billy Joe. Goes on for a while, but I'm not thinking. I am not thinking at all. Nothing's planned out, but I can express myself with this thing, which I could not with a regular B bender.
Okay, Henry, what do we have here?
So this is a failure so far of trying to do what a Heroes guitar does. I love the Hungarian guitarist who died quite long ago, Gabor Szabo, one of the first psychedelic guitarists, jazz guitarist, many great records on Impulse. And he always played a Martin D with a DeArmond pickup in it, and he played it through a very strange amplifier called a Toby, made in Texas, which nobody even seems to have one anymore. That was a stool with 2 10-inch speakers in it. And he got a unique, wonderful sound. And all his gear was documented, so we know he used Gibson Monel strings. So I thought I would take this Santa Cruz Model D, which is a 12 fret D, and he had a 14 fret D, so the pickup's in a different place, and see if I could do the Gabor Szabo thing. And dealing with the strings, you can't really get those strings. A friend of mine designs strings for Pyramid. And he said, oh, Henry, I was telling him my problem. He said, oh, I'm just working on a prototype of Monel strings. Let me send you a few sets. You could put them on. I was like, can you send it in Gabor's gauges? Yes. So he sent it, and he put it on this. I put him on this thing, and the string tension was so high, it felt like they were stainless steel rods. I mean, you couldn't bend or do any vibrato, and Gabor would do half-step bends and have a characteristic vibrato. I couldn't do it at all, and it sounded not great. I did this little demo with it then for you to show I'm trying to do it and failing. And then after I'd shot the little demo, I mentioned it to my friend who designs the string. He says, oh, yeah, sorry. We got, one of the wraps or the core diameter wrong, and they're way too tense. I'm making some new sets, and I'll have them sent to you. So that's a case where to understand what the Hero does sonically with the electric part of the system, you had to have the right strings, and it wouldn't work with anything else.
Yeah. Well, it's the same. It's the same with Steve Ray Vaughan. If you don't have the right strings, in my opinion, you're only halfway there.
Yeah, this wasn't just the right gauges, but it's the right tension of a weird acoustic set. And I see Martin makes a Monel set. I have not tried them, and the magnetic properties, how they interact with this specific pickup. It's right. Too many weird things at once to get the same. So I'll just show a couple of seconds of Gabor, and then you'll see my miserable attempt to try to play that way. The failure, my shame. Okay.
Henry, this looks a beautiful specimen. What is this?
So this is a Moonstone guitar. It was made by my late friend Steve Helgeson, and I'd noticed in photographs that my hero before I met him, TCG Munoz, was playing this guitar, this very guitar with these astrology inlays on the neck. And when I met TCG in person and he asked me to play on a record of his, which I did, I asked him about this guitar, and he said, oh, funny story. I found that in a dumpster in New York. Somebody said, hey, astrology man, there's a guitar in the dumpster for you. And this was in the dumpster, totally covered with dirt and stuff. And he says, I have no idea how it got there, but it came to me. And then I asked Steve Helgeson, he said, oh, I sold that to a guy who was a big drug dealer in New York who had a huge collection of guitars, and he had to leave the country and couldn't come back, and his landlord took all the guitars and sold all the expensive, gave them to the contractor to do some construction in the building, and they sold the Gibsons and the Fenders, and they didn't know what this was, so they threw it in the trash. And then TCG wanted to pay me to play on the record, and I was like, no, Sensei, no, you can't pay me. And then he gave me this guitar. Wow. And TCG's a very spiritual player out of the Coltrane thing and Pharaoh, and he played with Pharaoh. He's one of my favorite guitarists. And there is something spiritual in this weird guitar that connects to him, that when I play it, it opens a little door to a place I can't normally get to. And it's got
Wow.
13s on it, like he had on it, heavy strings, and I could play it like it has 8s on it. It's just kind of invisible.
Wow, and what a life it's had.
It's had a funny life, and I feel the big responsibility of, I'm 70 years old. I'm old. Where does it where's it go next? I've got to, this is one I can't sell. I have to find the right person for this little doorway to the cosmic universe to continue its job with afterwards. But so here I'll have it open the door here for a second.
Okay, so Henry, have we got the last, the last category where we actually own?
Yes, that was the category where we own the Heroes guitars. And do you own any of your Heroes guitars?
No, the only thing of note.
Do you have somebody slide or pick or anything?
Well, the only thing one of my great heroes was Howard Dumble.
Yes,
Alexander Howard Dumble, and my very good friend and great guitar player, great red hot guitar picker, Rick Vito, gave me this pedal,
and it was Dumble's.
Which you can see. I don't know if it's going to pick it up on the camera, but you can see Dumble's etched his name right here.
Oh,
and there's a very funny story very quickly. Dumble took Rick's Echoplex to fix, and he said, "You can have this whilst I fix your Echoplex." Rick never saw the Echoplex again.
It's funny. I have one of my Heroes pedals too. Elliot Ingber, known as Wingdale Fingerling and Captain Beefheart's band. I play guitar because of him, because he converted me on October 31st, 1971, where I went to this concert and he played the most amazing solo on Alice in Blunderland. And I went out and got a guitar the next day. And then I met him and became friends with him over the years. He's very eccentric and a social person. And about more than 10 years ago, I was visiting him in L.A., and I was saying, Elliot, I was on the Spotlight Kid. What's that weird fuzz you use? He says, that's fuzz was, I didn't like it, but it was before the first Gibson Maestro fuzzes, and it's what we used to tame a big amp, a Bassman, so we could play distorted without having it turn up so loud. So it's a fuzz from from 60 or 61. Or possibly that somebody had built for him, and he told me about it. And I said, I always loved it. Like I had a job going through all the unreleased Captain Beefheart in the vault, and you could hear this loud click on the master tapes when he stepped on the fuzz. And I was like, I love that click. He says, I hated that. I said, whatever happened to it? He says, it's in the other room. Do you want it? And he goes in the other room and gives me the fuzz.
Incredible.
So this is a weirder story. Here's a Stratocaster, which I bought at Alembic in San Francisco from Rick Turner many years ago. 77, 78? I don't remember. And I had it for years. And when I tried to play Grateful Dead music and did Dark Star in the late 80s and stuff, I noticed this guitar always wanted to play Dark Star. I lent this guitar to Jeff Tepper in Captain Beefheart's Magic Band, and it was the guitar he used for Doc at the radar station. And at that time, it had normal pickups, the Strat pickups that came in it, hadn't changed it to these Alembic pickups and changed everything. And so I had it for years. It sure liked to play Dark Star. And then one day, Susan from Alembic about 10 years ago says to me, "So, how's that guitar of Jerry's you have doing?" I'm like, "What guitar of Jerry's? I don't have a guitar." She says, "Yes, that Sunburst Stratocaster we sold you." And I was like, "You never told me that was Jerry's." She says, "Oh, I didn't." And it turned out they'd been switching necks and bodies on Strats of Jerry's, and they got rid of this one. This is the body of the one at the famous Creamery benefit in Oregon. Has this body. You can see the chips are the same. But I've changed everything and changed the pickups, so it's not the same. But it was Jerry Garcia's guitar, and it's not really authenticated as such. But it's weird, huh? Weird. So I have two Heroes guitars and one Heroes fuzz pedal.
Fantastic.
So let's hear this thing, and we'll say goodbye now.
Yes, let's say goodbye. So, guys, thanks a lot for watching this video. This has been amazing to do. We've had so much fun doing this.
Yes.
Thank you, Henry.
Thank you. Yes. Okay.